Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is my brother, Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
It's going well. I talked to you before the podcast. My throat hurts a little bit, but we're still here. We're still grinding. The Tylenol, it's inside my body, and I'm ready for another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. What about you?
There we go. There we go. We're gonna jump it out today, just like we do every week. We're gonna recap some college football. A ton of good games last week. We're gonna talk a little bit more college football this episode than we usually do. We're gonna hit some recaps of the NFL week. That's right. You're gonna know how we did last week, and if you were a betting man or woman, you probably should have listened to us once again. Previous week was 4-1. I'm not going to give the record away this week. Tanner will tell you, but just saying, if there's any bettors that are listening, make sure you're listening to the end of the pod because that's when we hit it. And then we got some matchup preview and picks for this upcoming week, and there are some great games on slate. So we're just going to jump into this right now. College football recap. Started it off on Friday night with Oregon State versus Utah. I texted you and Dad telling you got to watch this game because there's some guys in here that are going to be coming in the draft. And also, Oregon State ranked is just kind of cool to see. You know what I mean? You're used to seeing Oregon there with the nice jerseys. Then you got the Oregon State Beavers over there just kind of hanging out, and they're ranked. And they take down number 10 Utah. You know what I mean? Utah has a lot of really good players coming out of it these past couple of years. You wouldn't think that a Utah school would be that competitive, but just kidding. They are. You know what I mean? Number 10 in the country, and they lost. And they only put up 7. So Oregon State, I gotta shout you out. Great job this week. Did you catch that game? Because man, it was pretty boring.
I mean, I'm thinking Oregon State. They came over with their Beavers and they built a dam, right? They built a dam. That
Nice.
defense was very nice, and they took down Utah, who is not a bad team, right? They're in the top 10. And if you remember last season, I'm pretty sure they took down USC in that championship game. So they have a good record against high ranked teams and stuff like that. So it at least recently, and number 19 coming in, that's an impressive win. You should be very happy about that.
Exactly. And they definitely jumped up a little bit in the rankings. Definitely go check those out if you haven't yet for this week. We won't give any spoilers out. And then you just segued it. USC, Caleb Williams specifically, held off Colorado. And we have to talk about Caleb Williams. This is a sports podcast, specifically a football podcast. And if you know me, you know Tanner, we really like the draft. And this guy's going to go number 1. I've been saying it for a year now. And when you show up, I mean, it's not necessarily, I'm not going to say that Colorado's defense is top in the country. I don't think it is. I don't think it's anywhere close to top in the country, but they have some recruits. They have a lot of eyes. And when you have a coach like Deion Sanders, these kids are going to run through a wall for him. So if you have that many great athletes and recruits already, I mean, the Colorado's completely new. That never happens in college football. You have players that are left over from year over year, but I think there's only 4 that stayed in Colorado, and everybody else is completely new. So the fact that this team is even doing as well as it did at the beginning of the season is largely due to their quarterback, Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Deion has 2 kids on that team, both sides of the ball. It's kind of crazy. But when you have Sanders play that well against USC, that's what I was watching that game. I knew what was going to happen. I was excited that Colorado made it a game at the end, even though it was a 1-score game. It seemed like it wasn't really that close if you watch the game, in my opinion. But this was a game for Sanders to go out and show out. And he did, and his stock definitely rose. And there's no way he's not in the top 5 quarterback mentions for next year in the draft, right? I mean, after what he's done this year, he has to be. Caleb Williams is number 1. He's
Mm-hmm.
on the pedestal, right? Sanders also put up 41 against a USC team that has a lot more recruits and a lot better class than Colorado did.
Yeah,
So you got to look at that too. You know what I mean? So I mean,
yeah.
what did you think about that game, and what did you think about Caleb Williams and Sanders?
I think the biggest thing too is like Colorado coming into that game on their defense had a lot of starters that were out, right? You had that two-way planter and Travis Hunter, he was out, and I think Sanders' other kid, who you mentioned earlier, was out as well. So that's one of their 2 top at least defensive backs, and they're not in the game. And USC puts up 48. They probably would have put up 48 anyways, but it would have been a lot harder, I guess. There's more opportunities for turnovers and stuff like that, and to make it a closer game. But I think they only lost by 7, which is kind of impressive at the end of the day. Like you said, it didn't seem like a close game, but Colorado kind of turned it around. And that, I don't know what happened at halftime, but they came out and they were balling. They looked really good. Dion put in some young talent at wide receiver, and they went out and they balled. And you love to see that if you're a head coach. You love to see, your guys that you recruited going out there and making the most of the plays when they're given to them, right? Next man up. That's how it works in every level of football. So this Colorado team, I'm not going to say they're the best in the country because, they just lost to USC, but they're a good football team. They're resilient, they're tough, and they go out there and they fight every single down, every single play, every single week.
Exactly. And I couldn't have said it better myself. And, I'm excited. This is only the first recruiting class with Colorado, technically.
I know.
Technically.
That's crazy.
Technically. Yeah, technically they don't even have one, but maybe you can count this as their first recruiting class. Sanders still has next year. And who you're going to play with Colorado. You know what I mean? You know the division you're in. It's not the highest level of competition, but at the same time, it's not the lowest. No. And a lot of those games are going to be televised. And guess what? You have Deion Sanders there, so it's essentially like celebrities come to your school anyway. So a lot of kids are going to want to go there. And last thing I'll hit on Colorado, Travis Hunter was, I want to say, number 1 or number 2 in the nation coming out of high school, according to 24/7 Sports. And when you have a player of that caliber, that high, and he chooses to go to a school like Colorado, build it and they will come. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot more. You know what I mean? They're going to have a lot more 5-star prospects. That's by far not. They have a lot more to go, and I'm so excited to keep seeing Colorado and USC. Tara and I are going to go see USC versus UCLA in person. We'll give you a big recap on that one in November. But last thing I'm going to say, like I said about Caleb Williams, I think he was with that half. He was 17 for 20 with 3 or 4 touchdowns.
This is dumb.
And when you are constantly, when you're in the world of social media and you're as popular as Caleb Williams is, and you've already won the Heisman, there's nothing but pressure on you. Mm-hmm. That's all you have is pressure. No matter where you go, he has pressure on him. And week in, week out, he's performing. And I get it. The teams ranked wise that they've played have not been the highest, but at the same time, all I see is consistency from that player. And he's continuing to be consistent and showing why he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. Moving on to the next point, unranked Kentucky, going to talk a little bit SEC football. Unranked Kentucky takes down number 22 Florida. Kentucky over the recent years has had some really good players. Not back in the day, he's still in the league, but Bud Dupree was a nasty middle linebacker coming off the side there. Will Levis most recently was drafted, Mr. Mayonnaise himself, out of Kentucky. You have a lot of these players that are coming from Kentucky now. It's not just a basketball school anymore. And when you take down a team like the Florida Gators, I know they're not the Florida Gators of old. Go watch a Netflix documentary, but they're not that Florida Gators, but they're still the Florida Gators in a top recruiting class every single year in the SEC, and a ranked team in the SEC. Ranked team, and they're also in the SEC. You know what I mean? So it's a really good football team. It's a lot of really good talent. You're playing a ton of 3-4-star prospects, a little bit of 5-star sprinkled in there too. So that's big boy football, and Kentucky goes down there and wins. Did you catch that game?
I caught a little bit of it. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Kentucky just ran all over them. It wasn't really that much of a game, if I remember correctly. So to do that, against, like you said, the Florida Gators, it's just impressive. Like I really don't have much to say. It's a really impressive win.
Exactly. But one you will have a lot to say about. I would have to say the game of the year so far.
Oh gosh.
Ole Miss against LSU. Please take us through that one.
Dude, that was it reminded me of when Tennessee, I think, played Alabama last year, when it was just back and forth. And it's just LSU looked really good. You can't say that they didn't. But Ole Miss, I don't remember what the stat was, but it was like they're one of the best. They're one of the quickest offenses in college football, where it's like they're almost like constantly running the 2-minute drill for their offense. So they're just putting up points so much, and they have, I think, like one of the highest points per game in like the NCAA. So they showed it. Both teams showed that they can go blow for blow. I mean, sorry defense, because that was a high scoring game, and I really don't know, because it was a really close game at every single point in the game. Like I want to say LSU was down by a couple scores early, but then they just came back. They came roaring back, and they just made it a game. And ever since that point, it was just back and forth and back and forth. And you could have flipped a coin to see who would have won that game, honestly, in my opinion, because it just came down to the last possession, and Ole Miss got him, and I don't know, man. I don't know. I like it. I like it when these SEC schools just go at it. You know what I mean? They just rip each other a new one.
Exactly. And it was a fun matchup. And like I said, to start it off, I would say the game of the year so far. And you hit on it, what I was going to hit on. It's one of those games where it's going to be blow for blow. LSU did go down by about 14, and I want to say the first, second quarter. And you saw them just roar back. You know what I mean? And when you saw LSU roar back, you thought to yourself, well, I wonder if they're going to pull away from this game when they tied it. You know what I mean? But then no, Ole Miss just started scoring. And from there, at that point on, you knew that whoever had the ball last was going to win that game. It was like the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen battle a couple years ago in the playoffs. Yeah. Josh Allen didn't have a bad game. He just didn't have the ball last. That's the only reason the Bills lost that game to the Chiefs. And I think that's the only reason LSU lost it to Ole Miss, is because Ole Miss literally had it at the end. And also a couple key defensive stops too, obviously. But overall, that was a great game and is exactly why you watch specifically SEC football. Jumping to the next game that a lot of people aren't talking about. And I want to hit on this because I want your take. Notre Dame holds on and takes down Duke, even though Duke injured their quarterback. What is this Notre Dame team? Because to me, they're so close every year. But this year, to me, this team, it's crazy for me to say this right now, but this team just does not look as good as the previous Notre Dame teams to me, in my opinion. I just don't. When you're playing a team like Duke, and you have the recruiting class that you had out of Notre Dame, and you have all of the haters coming at you every offseason with Notre Dame, the new coaching change, everything that's going on new with that program, and as fast as they start, and then they get that first L of the season. And then if Duke's quarterback was healthy, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I was watching that game, and don't get me wrong, I love Notre Dame. I tune into any Notre Dame game that I can because it's Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I don't know, man. This year, to me, they look a little weaker than usual. What do you think?
It was one of those like games in college football where you just don't you don't expect it coming because it was kind of one of those lower scoring games. I'm looking at the score right now, 21-14 final score, and it was just kind of it wasn't a game that was, really just exciting, but I don't think Notre Dame looks bad per se, but I don't think they looked, extraordinarily good. And it's kind of like they just kind of made the mistakes themselves almost, you know what I mean? They kind of beat themselves in that game, but they still won, which is of course why they got the win, or they got the win at the end of the day. And I don't know, it's just not exciting football, maybe is what it is. They need to play a little bit better if they want to continue, to do stuff. I'm looking at it now. They play USC in 2 weeks, so it's 9 versus 10 right now, and USC went down again for some reason, and that'll be a good game for them to see what they're really made of. But their defense, you gotta say, has been pretty good, if not very good throughout the season. Because I'm looking back at their previous scores, they held Ohio State to 17, which is nice. Duke to 14, and these other schools to like 17, 24, 3, and 3. So that's an impressive start so far for their defense. And I don't know, maybe they're a defensive team. Maybe that's just what they're good at. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a bunch of I don't know is what that team is. Yeah. It's kind of my point, and kind of what I'm saying is like you don't really know what you have with them. Is my thing. Like if Notre Dame comes out and you tell me right now that Notre Dame's going to beat USC 28-24, I wouldn't be that surprised. Mm-hmm. But if you also told me that USC beat Notre Dame by 30, I wouldn't be that surprised. Yeah. So like you know what I mean? I just don't know what this team is, and I need to see better quarterback play. Yeah. Specifically, and I need to see more offensive. They have a lot of great recruits there, and I know the weapons that they have on that team, and I don't know. It's just when you come into the season that high of ranked, it's really hard You know what I mean? Because those expectations are already so high, and then to take a loss like that at the beginning of the season, you know what I mean, against the other team, the high ranked team that they played, but I don't know. For me, I just don't know, and we'll see. You know, we'll see what happens with them. But I'm just not totally sure. I'm not bought in on them yet. But at the same time, if they win in a couple weeks, they most likely will. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens. I don't know about UFC specifically. We're definitely going to preview that game, but that's going to be a game. That's going to be one for the ages. I have a feeling. Last thing we got on college football: massive matchups this week in Texas. We have Texas against Oklahoma, arguably their last test of the season. You know, they do play a couple other teams that are ranked at this point, but I really do think that's their last test of the season. And then Texas A&M takes on Alabama. So huge weekend in Texas football. And if UT wins, if they win, they have the best chance to make the college football playoffs if they beat Oklahoma. If they lose to Oklahoma, they could still potentially make it, but it's going to be tough. You know what I mean? They have this game, and then they're going to have the Big 12 championship at the end of the season. It's going to be those two games are going to be the games that could lose it for them. A&M, this is the hardest game of the season and the biggest game of the season. It's just that simple. It's Alabama. You know what I mean? We'll see what happens with Alabama, but I mean, first, what do you think? What's your prediction for Texas and Oklahoma? Quinn Ewers is diming them up every week. He has not looked like the Quinn Ewers of last season. He looks like a top 5 quarterback right now, and if he continues to do it, he probably will be. So, I mean, what do you got on this Texas-Oklahoma game?
Dude, no hesitation. Give me Texas. Texas looks just out of this world right now, and
Texas looks good.
They look really good, and they're just every single game they're just going out there and playing so consistent. Like they played Kansas this week, I'm pretty sure, and that's kind of like, I mean, I hate to say it, you know, no Texas fan wants to hear it, but it's like Kansas has, like, you know, sometimes gotten the better of them in the season where it's just like you don't want that to happen, like at the end of the season, stuff like that, but.
Exactly, and they were close at the half. They were tied within one score halftime of that game, and then Texas pulled away.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like that's like the monkey on their shoulder almost. You know, to go out there and beat Kansas in the way that you did. It's like, okay, you know, screw you guys. We're real. You know, we're not going to lose to you. We're not going to, fall to this trap in this game. And next week we're going to go out there and we're going to play some ball. And I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to win that game. If Oklahoma comes out and is just absolutely balling, sure. But I like Texas. I think they look really good, and I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think if they, like you said, if they win this game, they're just going to not cruise through the rest of their schedule, but they're going to win the games, and they're going to, stay at least a top 4 spot. Give me Texas, man. They're exciting. It's a fun football team to watch, and I'm all for it. We're both Aggies, but I can root for a Texas team that hasn't been this good in a long time.
Exactly. And I mean, it's when Texas is good, college football is good.
Yeah.
When USC is good, college football is good.
Yes.
When Notre Dame's good, college football is good. You know what I mean? Like Texas is one of those schools that when they're good, they make college football more fun, and you need them to be good. They're going into the SEC next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You should be having this season. If you weren't having this season, there'd be a bunch of, question marks of how they're going to do, right? And not to mention that now the recruiting against Texas A&M is going to be insane. You know what I mean? Now that they're going to play each other every year starting next year, the recruiting completely changes. And it's so big this year for Texas to have a good year going into the SEC, to have a really good recruiting class, because A&M has had the number 1 recruiting class in the nation last year. You know what I mean? They didn't do a whole lot with it, but they had the number 1 recruiting class of all time. And this year they had a top 5 recruiting class as well. So like, you when you have that good of recruiting classes, and A&M right now, we're just going to jump over to A&M and Alabama. Right now, A&M's tied for first in the SEC. They've only lost 1 game. They laid the duck against Miami. There's a lot of injuries, which is going to be a little bit tough in terms of playing Alabama. The starting quarterback with Wyman goes out. I'm not sure about his status for this week. I don't think he's going to be available from what I've been reading. So, you're going to be rolling with Johnson against Alabama. Johnson played really well last week. Played extremely well against a pretty decent Arkansas team at AT&T Stadium that is an NFL environment. That is a game that if you're going to drop as a young quarterback, it's going to be that one.
Mhm.
because you're not used to playing in NFL stadiums unless you're there for the Texas high school championships, the state championships. It's the only other time you'd be in that stadium. That's AT&T Stadium. That's 80,000 people. Yeah, well, A&M's 110,000, Chad. I know. I went to school there. You know what I mean? So when you're playing in the SEC and you're playing in NFL stadiums, that's when you're expected to, hey, maybe the pressure's going to get to him. No, it didn't. It didn't even get close, and he looked better than Weigman, I would argue.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? He looked better than him. So A&M fans are happy riding that in. An easy win in Arkansas. It wasn't that great of a game. A&M kind of ran away with it there. That's what you want to see going into playing Alabama. But this week's a big test. And personally, if A&M plays like they did last week, I think they win. If A&M plays like they did against Miami, they get destroyed. So if the A&M versus Miami does not show up, I think the Aggies can take down Alabama. They're trusting their true freshman quarterback now. Alabama is, and A&M is going to kind of ride, Johnson, and we're going to see what happens there. And you're going to really have to lean on your receivers at A&M. But once again, Alabama's got 5-star defensive backs sitting there waiting for you. How many defensive backs can you name in the NFL that recently went from Alabama? I could go on for a while. You don't want me to do that, but I think that A&M has this game if they come out strong. If they don't come out strong, I do think Alabama's going to score. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I know it's crazy against Alabama's defense. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game because it has to be to beat Alabama. But I do have A&M in that one, and I also agree with you. I think Texas takes down Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things about A&M and Alabama. I think just to start it off, like you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I think A&M's recruiting class has to show up in this game. They have to play up to their potential because if they don't, they're going to lose. It's like you said, it's all in the receivers. They need to go and they need to make good catches. They gotta play up to their strengths basically, and that strength should be Max Johnson, right? He looks, like you said, very, very good in that game against Arkansas. I think he's a senior, but he's been in the SEC for
Junior.
a while. He's a junior?
Junior.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
He's played at LSU, and he's been a starting quarterback there, and he's here in A&M now, and he's a veteran in the SEC. So if you want anyone to take on Alabama at their weakest, I would say in recent history, you would want it to be him.
That's a good point.
Connor Weigman, don't get me wrong, he was very, very talented when he was in, and he's played a lot of football for A&M so far, and he's played a lot of great football. But it almost looks like Max Johnson came in and he kind of controlled the game. He's like, okay, let's settle it down. We're not going to go, yard every single play. We're gonna run the ball. We're gonna take these little dink and dunks. We're not gonna do crazy stuff. And he's delivering great balls. He's not forcing anything that he doesn't need to, right? He'll take a shot downfield, which if it's open, and gosh,
he doesn't go for the home run every time.
Exactly,
like Weigman does.
If it's there, he's gonna take it. Because it's like, okay, Evan Stewart blitzing down the sideline, give me that all day. So it's like he's getting everyone involved. He's looking really, really good, and like you said, he kind of looks better than Weigman did so far. And I think that's just the maturity in his game, and it's showing through in his play. So again, to my last point, Bama, this is the weakest they've been in a while. And if anyone's going to take him down, it's going to be A&M, because they've just gone kind of like I was talking about earlier, like blow for blow with each other over the past couple years. I mean, I remember when A&M beat them, and it was just like, oh my gosh, that walk-off field goal. And then there was a game, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, where A&M, they get all the way down, and it's like tied or something like that. Or if A&M scores this touchdown, they win the game. They get all the way down to like the 1-yard line, and they blow it, and it's like, okay, Bama wins. And then it's just like, dang. So these teams with Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban, they know each other, right? They've played each other a lot. A&M has a chance to win this game. I'm not going to say they will win this game because, of course, it's Alabama, it's A&M, but it's going to be a good game. A&M's not going to go down easy. They're starting to catch a little bit of fire. I think they were pissed that Miami lost, and I don't know, man. I don't know. They look pretty good against Arkansas. I'm not gonna say the A&M's gonna win, but if they win, I'm gonna I'm gonna say they deserved it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
So you're picking Texas over Oklahoma, but you're not picking A&M over Alabama.
Because A&M's unranked, like, and Texas is number 3 in the country.
Why not? Why not? Well, we're Aggies. We can go for it. Jump into the NFL now. A little bit of Week 4 recap. We're gonna hit some stories here. We're gonna right out the gate. We'll go into it. Cowboys versus Patriots. 38-3 was the final score.
Schlack.
And exactly, yeah, Schlack. Exactly. Just got rocked, punched in the mouth. Didn't get back up. Largest loss Bill Belichick has had in a very long time. And you know what? Hey, once again, if you listen to the pod, we actually called that one. You know what I mean? We said it. Dak looked great. As soon as Dak came out, you knew Belichick was not going to let Tony Pollard run that ball. And Dak Prescott was slinging the rock right out the gate. Then, Deron Bland comes out there and gets 2 interceptions. One of them's to the house. I remember in the middle of the game, I said, I don't know if I like Deron on the outside. He's not playing that well. Bam, interception, pick 6. Okay. So that was a wrong statement for me at that moment in time. But the first quarter, it was a little worrisome. You know what I mean? Dallas drove all the way down the field. The red zone struggles continued in certain drives, but then Dallas really punched it in. Dallas actually got touchdowns in the red zone. That's why you have 38 points. You know what I mean? You're not going to put up 38 points if you don't have touchdowns in the red zone. They figured that one out. Like I said, Dak Prescott looked really good. The running game wasn't there necessarily, but you knew it wasn't going to be there going into the game. At the beginning, the Patriots were moving the ball on the Cowboys. They were. And then it just stopped out of nowhere. Stopped completely on a dime. Mac Jones didn't do anything the rest of the game after the one drive that he moved down the field and got a field goal and did nothing the rest of the game. Dallas had clamps on them. They weren't even necessarily in the backfield as much, but the coverage was just unbelievable. I don't know if that was the slow receivers from New England Patriots, no disrespect, but you looked really slow and you made Dallas look really fast, which thanks for playing the 49ers this week. We need to look really, really fast. So, you have the Cowboys go in and have a win like that. That's big. And that's exactly what you need going into the 49ers this week. But the Patriots, to me, they just lack a lot of offensive power. They have some solid running backs there with Stevenson. They tried to bring in Zeke every now and then. He didn't do anything. Stevenson didn't really do a whole lot other than that first drive too. So, their running backs didn't get going. And when New England's running backs don't get going, you're relying on Mac Jones and Juju Smith-Schuster. To me, that combo is not going to win you football games. It could, once again, couch warrior over here, but that combo, I'll take Deron Bland all day in that matchup. I'll take Stephon Gilmore all day in that matchup. And they just were not as good offensively as Dallas was defensively. And that's pretty simple.
Yeah. I mean, it was, like I said earlier, shellac. This was just the defense they fed. It showed early. Like, the Patriots went down and they got the 3 points off the field goal, and it was a good drive. Like, I was genuinely worried. I was like, okay, here we go again. Cardinals all over again. But Dallas's defense came out the next play, and they just looked really good. And it was, I think, to your point, it was kind of like the secondary started getting going early. But gosh, man, I think the defensive line was honestly more impressive to me throughout just the entirety of the game. Like throughout towards the end of the game especially, because it was the defensive line for that first Mac Jones fumble into return for a touchdown. He came, I don't remember who it was, but the defensive lineman came from behind and just surprised him, and he dropped the ball, and Leighton picked it up, end zone, house call. And it wasn't Micah Parsons was my thing. It was the other defensive linemen that were making plays. Sure, Micah, he was getting pressures on the quarterback. But you saw all these guys just getting involved. That's what you want to see from this defense. That's a Dan Quinn defense. These guys who you wouldn't expect to do it, they just go out there and make plays, on these certain plays. It's not always Micah Parsons. And that's what I loved. I love to see that. And gosh dang, man, if Mac Jones, he kind of threw it away himself. He was forcing the turnovers, and it was just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? This Cowboys defense, they're not going to give you that stuff. So I think the storyline is more, the Cowboys defense, they look dominant like they usually did. That Deron Bland played a hell of a game. I mean, gosh, how many times did you just watch him when he was just like very behind the receiver. Mac Jones throws the ball, and he just, boom, accelerates, hits that ball, mine. It's mine all day. He had a pass breakup like that, and I think he was a little mad that he didn't get the ball, so he did it again, and he got a pick 6. and then he got another pick off of it, too. So he had a day. The defense had a day. Onto the offense, they didn't look, amazing, but Dak made the throws when he needed to. He didn't have to do the world. I think people were kind of ragging on Dak and the offense for not putting up a bunch of points, but it's like they don't really need to. Defense wins championships. Obviously, it'd be nice if Dak were to go down there and, throw like 3 touchdowns and stuff like that, but they're playing it safe. He just got off a season where he had the most interceptions in his career. So I understand the thinking behind it. I don't remember who was saying it during the game, but the Cowboys want to throw the ball. It's not like they want to rush like 80% of the game on offense. They want to throw the ball. They have talented receivers and CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert, and like they're very talented on the receiver side of the ball. Heck, even the tight ends are pretty talented, except for Schoonmaker and that drop in the end zone. That was just ooh. Jake Ferguson, he looks great. But Cowboys, they want to play to their strengths, and that's throwing the ball. And like you said, Dak looks pretty good. He looked pretty good throwing the ball, especially that dime to CeeDee in the end zone. That was really nice. I think the Cowboys look really good. There's not much to say that was bad about it because the defense only allowed like 3 points. So I was a big fan. If the defense plays like that again next week, I think they're gonna have a game with the Niners. I don't want to get into that right now until we go into it, but yeah, Cowboys defense played lights out. They got 2 touchdowns, which is really cool, and that was pretty fun.
Exactly. And then jump into the second point we have. Bills beat the Dolphins. Not a lot of people thought that the Bills were going to go in and beat the Dolphins, but we did. You know what I mean? So my big question is, do you think the Dolphins are going to bounce back? Because this was arguably definitely the first performance where they didn't really look like the Miami Dolphins that they had over the previous weeks. And with the loss of Tre'Davious White from the Bills, their number 1 corner, with the torn Achilles, that's huge. That's huge. You saw the defense 2 years ago when he tore his, I want to say it was MCL or ACL. The defense did drop off a bit in the defensive backs category. So that's something you need to watch with Buffalo because their number 1 corner is now out for the rest of the season. But Miami couldn't even move the ball on him. Buffalo was doing really well that entire game. And, Josh Allen showed up. Josh Allen had 3 first half touchdowns for sure, maybe even 4. And, fantasy had a day. And, do you think the Dolphins will bounce back? Do you think that they're going to continue to put up numbers? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Dolphins are I think they're for real. I don't think they're going to just lay down and die after that loss. They've got too much talent on the offensive side of the ball to do that. It was just kind of, I think it was one of those games where it's like a divisional matchup. These teams know each other. They're gonna play each other like they play each other. 2 times a year, and that's exactly what happened. Josh Allen went out and had himself a game, and Stephon Diggs went out and had himself a game.
That's true.
I was amazed at that touchdown where he just like wrestled off the defender and just ran to the house. I was like, okay, you're just like that, I guess. In terms of the Dolphins, it was just like little miscues. It's just like little mistakes here and there that got the better of them, and Buffalo took advantage of that. I'm pretty sure Raheem Mostert, the guy who started, he fumbled the ball in like the 20-yard line or something like that, and it just gave Buffalo the full field towards that end of the game. And it was just like, what are we doing here, guys? So I think the Dolphins just had a little bad game. I think they'll be back next week, though.
Exactly. And then moving right on to the next point, I think it's officially time to say the Lions are the real deal. I was not going to jump on the train this early. But I have to because, when I watch football, I like to watch good football teams. And right now the Lions are playing like they're a really good football team. Really good football team. You know what I mean? And they don't even have their not rookie, but practically is rookie in terms of games played in the NFL. Jameson Williams still hasn't been back yet. And that's a number 2 wide receiver, walks right in. So he helps Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit too. Also helps the running game with Gibbs with just the speed that he has and Montgomery. So, I mean, Detroit's defense is hitting on all cylinders. Every single one of their draft picks is playing well. They were the announcers were talking about Jack Campbell out of Iowa, the linebacker, who I had ranked as I want to say the only first round linebacker that I had on my board. They did take him a little bit early, but I love that draft strategy. They took Gibbs too early. They took Campbell too early. It's like, look at what they're doing in the NFL. They're both performing pretty well. Gibbs didn't play that well this past week, but at the same time, when you have a backfield that they have an even 50-50 split, if not Gibbs playing actually a little bit less, like 40-60 right now with how well Montgomery's playing. But the Lions look good, and the Lions definitely have a, when you play a team like the Packers, that's a decent football team. It's not a good football team, not a great football team. That's a decent football team. And if Jordan Love gets hot, then it becomes a good football team. You know what I mean? Because their defense is pretty solid. Their offensive line has been solid the past couple of years, is still solid. But what you're seeing is that inconsistent play from Jordan Love, especially when you have Detroit and Aiden Hutchinson getting pressure like he did. So when you have a defensive line, eating like Buffalo did and eating like Detroit did, it's going to be really hard to come out on the winning side of that game. Also, like New York last night, they got sacked 9 times. You're not going to win the game when you get sacked that much. So that's kind of what I took away from that game. But, dude, Detroit, I think, is going to make the playoffs.
They might win their division. Heck, they're probably going to win their division. Like, right now, they're the front runner for it. And that defense, sneaky good. Sneaky good. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson alone is just an absolute mammoth of a man, and he's showing it every Sunday. And the secondary is getting plays. They're making plays. It's impressive. I love what you got Jack in my head. I love what Dan Campbell I love what Dan Campbell has done to that team just overall. I mean, he's made them a tough, like, hard-nosed football team. And, I mean, the balls to run it with David Montgomery like 32 times and just destroy the Packers in the run game. Like, just destroy them. I mean, it wasn't even close. Jahmyr Gibbs fantasy owners are like crying right now because Montgomery was just like lights out that game. But it's working. Like, why would you stop doing it? You know what I mean? Like, there's just no reason to. He's smart. He's playing very smart. The players that he's coached they're playing up to their potential, and it's the Jared Goffins. Like, this is what we live for, baby. I could not go through this segment without saying it. I'm here. I'm here. I'm rooting for this team. They're going to win this division, I think, unless something catastrophic happens. But they look really, really good. The offense is playing extraordinarily well. The defense is playing extraordinarily well. They're getting turnovers. They're getting sacks. They're getting pressures constant. And it's the Lions. It's their time to shine, baby.
We'll see what happens the rest of the season, but they're playing good football. Jumping to the next point, Chicago goes up, plays really well in the first half. Justin Fields has a perfect first half. You know what I mean? A literal perfect first half in terms of completions and attempts. And then loses in the second half to Russell Wilson and the Broncos, 31-28. Doesn't even put up any points, doesn't move the ball, doesn't do anything. Is Justin Fields the future? Because right now they hold number 1 and number 2 in the draft.
I mean, aren't they technically the worst team in the NFL right now? Except for Carolina, I think, who is also winless because they lost to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think, is Carolina the only other winless team? I think so.
Okay, yeah, because Denver beat Chicago, and then the Vikings beat Carolina. So. Yep. Those two, I mean, out of those two, probably the Bears are not.
Well, wait, doesn't Chicago have like Carolina's pick?
Oh, do they? I mean,
because they have 2 picks, something like that. It's something like that.
They do have
that
2
might
picks.
be why they have 1 and 2. I think it's Carolina's pick, which is 2.
They do have 2. They do have 2 picks. Well, they might because of the DJ Moore trade. So that might be it. Or was it a trade? I don't know. But they got the first 2 picks. Yeah, I think Justin Fields. Okay, let me say that again. No, I don't think Justin Fields is the answer.
Confirmed. That was
the reason. Okay, so if you're a Bears fan, you want the Panthers to continue to do bad, and you want the Bears to probably continue to do bad as well, because you could probably turn around your football team in that draft with the first 2 picks, like just hands down. I don't think Justin Fields is the answer. I think he came out in the first half and he had a great half, like you said, but then he went out in the second half and did the exact opposite. He kind of threw the game away. I mean, I didn't watch much of it, but I remember like seeing on the highlight things, and they was just like Justin Fields like fumbles away some ball, and then the Denver Broncos just like run it back for a touchdown on the defensive side, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like what's going on here?
Every time that you couldn't have a mistake, they had a mistake.
Yeah.
Like that's the best way I could describe it in the second half. It was like we need to go out there and play mistake-free football. It was mistake and the word free crossed out, just mistake football. Like that's literally what they played in the second half. Because I mean, for you to be down by that much, you know what I mean? Come on, you really got to mess up in the second half. All you have to do is score one time. All they had to do was score one touchdown. They would have won that game, and they didn't. So yeah, I'm completely in agreement with you. Right now, first half, it's really hard to say that Justin Fields isn't the quarterback of the future, or quarterback for the Chicago Bears for the foreseeable future.
I don't think it's
but
that
then
hard.
The second half happened.
Yeah, I don't think it's that hard. Even then, like they're 0-3 coming into that game, right? And they're just not playing well, like at all. And like, sure, yeah, they get a great first half. Don't get me wrong, but it's about finishing. It's Russell Wilson, who had a terrible season last year. He's actually performed pretty well this year. If you've watched those games, he's put up a lot of points, and that's exactly what he did in that half. He came out and he put up a lot of points. His scoreline was awesome. He played, very, very well. For Justin Fields, I don't know. I do not think he is the answer. I don't know. Maybe the Ohio State quarterback curse is getting to him, just a little bit. But you know who the Ohio State quarterback curse isn't getting to? Is CJ Stroud.
And that's my next point. He's dominating. He's dominating right now. He's absolutely dominating. The Texans go in and, don't even pick first overall. Don't even pick numero uno. And still get their guy. And CJ Stroud. Bryce Young goes number 1 of the Panthers. And then Texans take CJ Stroud right there at number 2. And then they trade back into the first round to get Will Anderson Jr., who's also performing at a very high level. I mean, CJ Stroud right now is not only winning Rookie of the Year in terms of the race right now, given it's like week 4, week 5, but it's far ahead. I mean, it's not even close. He's setting Houston franchise records, rookie records right now. The kid hasn't thrown a pick yet. Now that I said that, it'll happen. Watch next game. It'll absolutely happen. But he's playing lights out with majority of his offensive line hurt. That's insane. And his other teammates are hurt too. It's not just the offensive line. He's got multiple people on the offensive side that are hurt. Same on the defensive side. Texans are like one of the most hurt teams in football up until this previous week. And he's still figuring out how to get wins and performing at a high level and not even looking like he came from college last year. I mean, right now he is levels above Bryce Young. Levels above him. And if he continues to do this, he's going to win Rookie of the Year. And he makes the Texans a legit threat in that division. They already took down arguably the best team in their division with Jacksonville, and CJ Stroud smoked them the previous week. Smoked Jacksonville. It wasn't even close. And then he comes in and does it again this week against the Steelers. So it's like this kid's starting to perform that really high, and I don't know if a lot of people thought it was going to happen this early, especially in Houston. I think even the ownership was like, have a couple bad seasons, it's all good. You know what I mean? And now they're like, wait, hold on, we can win this division. You know what I mean? Like they have a chance to win this division right now because they have the game ahead on Jacksonville. Colts don't scare me that much. You know what I mean? So I don't know. John Taylor's come back for the Colts, so that may be kind of a bigger issue for everybody else in that division. But still, the Texans, rookie dominance, CJ Stroud.
I think the biggest thing about CJ Stroud too is you watch him play, and it's not like he's like barely getting these throws. You know what I mean? Like he's diming these receivers. Like he is putting the ball in the perfect place. Like he is fitting this ball into tight windows. He's throwing on the run from awkward angles. He's, like you said, it's almost like a makeshift offensive line. He's getting pressured and he's escaping the pocket and he's making plays with his legs. He's making plays with his arm, and he is the Houston Texans right now. Of course, on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, Will Anderson is just putting on a show. So their top 2 picks that they drafted this year are just stunning. Absolutely stunning. They're turning this franchise around. They're doing exactly what I've wanted them to do, in these past couple of years. They trade away Deshaun Watson. They get just a house full of picks, and they are using them, and they are just coaching them up. And C.J. Stroud, man, I just can't believe it. I'm so happy for the guy. I'm on the Texans train right now. He's like simultaneously like breaking Houston's curse and, like I said, the Ohio State quarterback curse. It's amazing. He's playing lights out,
Exactly.
Impressive.
Exactly. Absolutely impressive. Absolutely playing lights out. Last thing we're going to hit on, then we're going to jump to week 5 matchup preview and some picks there. Honest question. If you're the Bengals, do you sit Joe Burrow? Because this is not, I don't know who this is. This injury is clearly affecting him. And I know that they played the Rams and they the previous week and they played well, but they didn't play great this past week. And I mean, you have your star receiver that's visibly, frustrated. The fact that him and Joe Burrow go back to LSU too, like that, the fact that he's already getting that frustrated doesn't tell me that the injury is getting any better. You know what I mean? That's probably why a portion of his frustration. He knows that Joe can't get the ball to him. I don't know. Like, he signs the biggest contract in NFL history and then tweaks his calf in training camp and is, of course, going to play, because if he doesn't, then like, who's going to go to the games? You know what I mean? Because that they don't win. It's just that simple. The Bengals don't even get close to winning if Joe Burrow's on air. And Joe Burrow's here this year and they're still not winning. Like, he just signed the biggest franchise or contract in franchise history in the NFL. And he's hurt. He's hurt. You know what I mean? I'm wondering if it's one of those injuries where it's like it can't get any worse, but clearly it's affecting his play. And for me, I'm hurting a little bit on the fantasy side. I'm gonna run with the Goff-fence now, moving forward, because I got Jared Goff as my backup. But what do you think the Bengals should do with Joe Burrow? Because I mean, he's taken punishment on that leg and he's still playing. So I don't know. To me, as a fan of the Bengals, it's just like, it's hard because they've been bad for so long. You know what I mean? And they're finally good. And then their quarterback gets tweaked in training camp, and he's just not the same. Like, I don't know. What would you do?
It's really hard because, I mean, you look at the situation, and he's not playing well. He's not playing good at all. They got destroyed by the Titans, and the Titans aren't that great, I would say, in terms of,
they got destroyed by the Texans the previous week.
Yeah. So in terms of like the hierarchy of the NFL, the Titans aren't looking great, but they somehow destroyed the Bengals, and Joe Burrow, if you're that front office, it's a tough situation, because let's say this happens. Let's say they sit Joe Burrow, right? Let's say they go and they sit Joe Burrow because he's injured, of course. And let's say he's out for 3 to 4 games. So let's say 4 games. In that time span, they're probably not going to win a lot of games. So let's say they go like 1-3. Now, what are they right now? 1-3. So that means you're 2-6 after that time. Joe Burrow comes back. Do you expect him to come back and win, like 10 of, let's say 8 of those last 10 games, right? Or 9 games.
If he's fully healthy, and you have to win 8 of 9, I don't want to bet anybody on that. Like, I don't even want to bet like Brady on that. You know what I mean? 8 and 9 regular season games just to make a wild card spot in the playoffs. Like, no. And then the other question comes up from that: does he just sit the whole season?
But you're just forfeiting the season at that point, because he can obviously play. Is that just like at that point, is that tanking?
You just answered the question. That's exactly why. Like, they can't sit him. It's a lose-lose situation. If they sit him now and they lose, then they have to sit him and lose the season.
I think
if they don't sit him and continue to lose, then what happens? You know what I mean?
I think is the injury bad enough that if he continues to play, will he injure it further? Like, if he continues to play, could it get worse and he could be out for an even longer amount of time for the next season, because you don't want that. Absolutely not. You do not want this to come over into the next season, whatever possible. Like, I don't know what to do if you're the Bengals, because Joe Burrow is obviously not playing well, but if it's not a bad injury, like if he can still play on it, he probably still gives you the best chance to win, all things considered, because they don't really have anyone else. So if he can go out and, I mean, I don't know, because you don't expect to make a far playoff run with this Joe Burrow, right?
Nope.
So it's kind of hard. It's the early beginning. It's the beginning of the season. Maybe you sit him like 2 weeks. Maybe see if he gets better a little bit. Hopefully that bye week is going to help. Maybe you sit him like 2 weeks before the bye or something like that. I don't know. But the Bengals probably won't sit him because, they're trying to win football games. But I don't know. I really don't know. If it were me, I don't think I would have played him in the first place. Obviously hindsight is a big factor in this, but after that week 1, he's just like obviously not right. Maybe, put him back down for a couple weeks, and then, he's coming back, he's healthier, and it's a much different situation. But I don't know. It's hard because you basically played yourself into the worst possible situation if you're the Bengals. So there's not a good way out of this unless Joe Burrow magically starts playing, very well on his hurt ankle or hurt whatever it is. Calf.
His calf. Yeah. Well, couldn't have said it better myself. Jump into the last segment of the episode, Week 5 matchup preview and some picks. Tanner, how did we do when we picked our games last week?
Let me pull this up really quickly. Oh, hello. You can see that.
But
all right, here we go. I got it. Don't worry. So you and I, we both went an astounding 5-0.
Nailed it.
So that brings both of our records to 14-7. It's almost like we're brothers. It's almost like we think very similarly. So let's kick it off. Let's kick it off with the picks. Why don't you start us off? With the Bears and the Commanders?
We've got Thursday night game. We've got the Bears and the Commanders. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't even know if I'm gonna tune into that one. I'm gonna go Commanders. I will tune into it. I tune into every game, but I'm gonna definitely go Commanders. I don't think that the Bears are. I don't know if they're gonna win this season. I think that Denver was a very easy win. I do think they will actually win a game this season. I think that the Bears will win a couple games this season, but Washington has a very good defense. And they are very happy right now that they're going against a struggling Justin Fields. If anybody in the NFL has fast, athletic, outside edge rushers, it's Washington. They got the guy by the name of Chase Young, whose 40 time is very close to Justin Fields' 40 time, believe it or not. So Justin Fields, they're going to have a quarterback spy on him like every team's doing this year. They're not letting him scramble. And I think that that's taking away a lot of, what he did in high school and college. In realistically in the NFL too. So I got the Commanders. The Commanders offense, isn't really the best right now. But when you have a guy like Brian Robinson Jr. who's playing extremely well and the quarterback is not making mistakes like Sam Howell's doing, then I think they can win the game. If you're going to force Sam Howell to actually go in and win the game, then probably got the Bears in that one. But I think that the Commanders get it done, especially with who they've played and what they've done this season too. Their record's not the best, but they've played pretty good against pretty solid football teams. So I'm going to go Commanders over the Bears.
Yeah, I think I'm going to also go Commanders over the Bears for a lot of the same reasons. Sam Howell, he hasn't looked great, but he's had some good games. He's had some bad games. This past week we saw him play against Philly, and that was a good game. He played pretty well in that game. He was slinging it, and he was against Philly's defense. Like, that's impressive. That's really impressive. And the Commanders' defense, Chase Young, you said it. God. God. I mean, he was just bullying that Eagles offensive line, like just bullying, and he was just making his presence known. I think he's going to do the exact same thing on Thursday night, and you're going to see a lot of him. So, yeah, give me the Commanders. That defense is going to make a stand, and sorry, Justin Fields, it's just not your year.
No lie. The Sunday morning game, we got another really early game in London. The Jaguars stayed. They played last week in London against, oh my gosh. Who did the Jaguars play?
Atlanta.
Thank you. I was going to say I just completely left. Yes. Here it's like 6:30 in the morning, so it's pretty early, but I'll be up for it. Bills and Jags. That's a good one. I'm definitely going to have the Bills. I do think the Jags are going to play well, though. They always play well in London. They played really well against the Falcons, honestly. So I think that the Bills are going to take them, though, after that dominant performance against Miami. Now, a big factor is that the Bills have to travel. The Jags are already there and been practicing. So if anybody has an advantage, it's definitely the Jaguars. And if the Jaguars are ever going to catch the Bills, it's going to be this week. But I can't go against Josh Allen when he gets 3-4 touchdowns in the first half of the previous week. I just can't go against that. So I'm going to go the Bills against the Jags, but I do think it's going to be a close game, and I do think Trevor Lawrence isn't going to look too bad. And I think he's going to start to pick on the Bills cornerbacks, and you're going to start to see where the holes are in that defense without Tre'Davious White.
Yeah, 100% agree. Tre'Davious White, like you said, I think it's gonna be a big noticeable difference. You're gonna see Trevor Lawrence, and he's not bad. Like he's had a rough start to the season. He's had some good games, some bad games, but he's a very good quarterback, and he knows how to get his receivers the ball one way or another. I think this is going to be a close game. I think Josh Allen's not going to play as well as he did last week because it's kind of hard to repeat that performance. And I think the Bills are still going to win, but not by much. I think Josh Allen probably throws a turnover or two. Maybe even Trevor Lawrence will throw a turnover or two. But Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to play well. Hopefully he gets Calvin Ridley involved in the game because that's like their number one receiver, and he's not been great except for like week 1. He caught a touchdown this past week, but after that, it was a whole lot of nothing. So, I got the Bills, but the Jags will not be far behind.
Yeah, and just to hit on that last point you made with Calvin Ridley, and I mean Christian Kirk's taking all of their targets. He had I think 12 targets last game. I mean, when you have 12 targets, that means 12 passes is going your way. Calvin Ridley only had 4 or 5 targets. One of them was a touchdown. If he didn't have that touchdown, it would have been another bad week. So I don't know. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is if Christian Kirk has moved up to wide receiver 1 in that depth chart. I mean, they paid $70 million for him. You know what I mean?
That's
but
true.
Still not too bad between those two guys. But yes, for them to win against the Bills, both of those receivers have to show up.
Yeah.
And then we got a little bit more Sunday football. And since we were talking about him so much this episode, we had to bring him in. Texans versus the Falcons. I think that's a pretty solid matchup and a pretty tough one to pick against. I think that's the hardest one for me to pick this week. But I'm going to go Texans. I think the Texans are gonna take the Falcons. Bijan is going to be hooping like he always does, but CJ Stroud's playing really well, and the Falcons defense I don't think is as good as some of the defenses they've already played and already beat. So I'm gonna go Houston and the rookie quarterback in this one.
Yeah, it hurts because I'm gonna go Texans. Don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna explain why. Because the Falcons, I don't really know why the Falcons got rid of Marcus Mariota, because Desmond Ridder is doing almost the exact same thing that Marcus Mariota was doing when he was there. Like he just obviously I'm joking, but he just can't throw the ball. You know what I mean? Like he just can't get his receivers the ball. Everything is just relying on Bijan, which is what we thought was going to happen. But like you gotta get the pressure off Bijan a little bit. Like the receivers are doing nothing, and you have Kyle Pitts, who of course has had a not so great NFL career so far, but he still has talent. You see him; he still gets some very nice catches. And then Drake London, he's a great receiver. You saw him ball out at one point. Like he's not getting the targets or the catches either that he needs to, and it's just like, what's going on with this passing game? I haven't seen him do a whole lot in the past couple weeks. So yeah, give me the Texans. The Texans defense looks hot right now, and their offense looks even hotter. So.
Exactly. And the thing with the Falcons is it's tough, right? You have all these playmakers, but you have to get the ball in the playmakers' hands.
Yes.
Bijan gets the ball handed to him. You know what I mean? Like they hand the ball off to him. Mm-hmm. And obviously they throw some screen passes and also some crazy wheel routes and some slants and anything else that they throw with Bijan's way. But the thing with Atlanta is that we'll see what happens toward the season, but I wasn't the biggest fan of Desmond Ridder coming out of college anyway, coming out of Cincinnati. But I said when he came out, he had a third, fourth round projection for me. And my weaknesses for him coming out of college was exactly what you just said, accuracy. He needs to learn how to accurately throw the ball. He was in the 60% completion percentage in college, which is not bad. You know what I mean? It's not bad, but he was in the lower 60%. So he when you really want to see a player complete passes is at the collegiate level. They don't necessarily not complete passes at the collegiate level and then go complete a bunch of passes at the NFL level. I haven't really seen that trend yet. But he's just not the guy, I don't think. And he's young. They still have a ton of time left in this season, ton of time left on the contract. But when you have this many young playmakers and this athletic of a team, you're just wasting these guys right now. Like Kyle Pitts is just not being used right. I do not believe that Kyle Pitts is. I mean, come on.
I know.
Like, just watch the game. You know what I mean? Like I when I watch the Falcons play, it's honestly frustrating because I'm watching and I'm like, Kyle Pitts is open. Drake London is open. Kyle Pitts is open. And yes, they do drop. Kyle Pitts does at least have a drop every single game. But I mean, Desmond Ritter's not even giving him a chance. You know what I mean? Like, he's really not even giving him a chance. And if Bijan wasn't there, I think we would be talking about this team as being one of the worst in the NFL, in my opinion. So, Algier's playing really well as well. That other running back that they have, Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. So clearly what they're favoring is the running game. But when you're playing these higher level teams, you know what I mean? It's going to be hard. Yeah. And the Texans now have a really good defensive line, especially with Will Anderson there. So it's going to be a little bit harder to run. I'm not saying Bijan's not going to be able to do it, but Texans aren't even close to the top defensive lines in the NFL. You know what I mean? Not even close to the top defensive lines in their division, right? Like, you got to start performing a little bit better if you're Atlanta. And you like the hot start. You like the 2-0 start, but they've dropped the past two. And
bad.
Now it's 2-2. And that division is wide open. And, like, do you see Desmond Ridder getting levels better before the end of the season? No. You know what I mean? I don't. Like, could it happen? I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
If anybody's going to get levels better before the end of the season, it's going to be Justin Fields because you see the potential.
Yeah.
I don't see the potential in Desmond Ridder. No disrespect, but I just don't. And, that's why I wasn't as highly graded on him as some experts were when he was coming out of college. But, hey, maybe he can prove me wrong. And if he does, that's awesome because Atlanta is a sick team.
They are.
They have a lot of really good playmakers. So, yeah, that's what I got on Atlanta. You got anything else in Atlanta, or we jump into this next matchup?
Let's go next.
Sunday night, Cowboys and 49ers. You already know who Tanner and I are going to pick. You already know we do it every week, but this one is a 100% to me a 50-50 toss-up. 49ers are one of two undefeateds left. The other team is Philly, who should have lost this past week. They should have against Washington, but they didn't. And you have Philadelphia Eagles, who are undefeated, and you have the 49ers, who are undefeated. And they are playing the Cowboys, who only have one loss. And the Cowboys came off a really good week this past week, like Tanner and I was saying. It's pretty simple. This game is pretty simple to me. If you want to win and you're the Cowboys, your defense has to play well. And you got to pick one guy to shut down. Right now, it's probably Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
He has like 4 touchdowns last game. He had 3, I think, the game before. You know what I mean? I have him in fantasy. Thank you, CMC. But you got to shut down McCaffrey. If you don't, there's no way. You know what I mean? There's so many weapons on that offensive side of the ball. Kittle's not necessarily, the biggest weapon as he used to be, but he's more of a weapon on the blocking side. And then if he gets the ball in open space, you're toast.
Yeah, but he can get going. That's the thing.
Exactly. He can get going. Same with Debo. Same with Brandon Ayuk. The offensive line is still there, and Brock Purdy looks good.
I know.
Looks really good. And so does the 49ers defense does have a little bit of holes. I have seen a little bit of holes this year in the 49ers defense, especially this previous week where they almost lost. Not really. They destroyed them. But the 49ers offense is so high-powered. And the only way that Dallas wins this game is they have to – it's going to be a high-scoring game. And it's going to be one of those games that's going to be going back and forth, in my opinion. I think it's going to be really high scoring, but Dallas just has to get the ball last, which is the theme of this episode, or that defense has got to make some third down stops. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, in your opinion, does this game on Sunday Night Football have the potential to be the best game of the season so far?
I mean, it's hard not to say that that one of these teams is not going to be in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
I think that at least one of these teams is going to be in the NFC Championship, if not both of them. So yeah, I think with just playoff implications alone, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. When we've seen Dallas and San Francisco play the past couple times, it's been in the playoffs, and it's kind of like, okay, who's going to score more points is kind of what you're thinking going into the game, but it really hasn't been like that throughout the game, right? It's just kind of been those games that are like, okay, it's like 21 to like 17, or just like, like 13 and 19 or something like that. Like, they're not like super high scoring games. And these teams kind of don't play well against each other, weirdly enough. The Niners have gotten the dub the past couple times, and they've played, pretty well, but Dallas has stopped them to a degree every single time. So it's hard to say that Dallas is going to have their number again, because they didn't have it the previous two times to that much extent, right? But I think Dallas, this is probably one of the best Dallas defense we've seen in recent memory. So if any Dallas team has a chance to beat them, I think it is this Dallas team that you're going to see on Sunday night. And like we know and love with the Cowboys, they're regular season warriors. They just do this kind of stuff. So if that defense plays like it has been playing, except for the Arizona game, to this point in the season, I think they give Dallas a chance to win the game. Now, the offense also has to play up to a level that we haven't seen yet, though. That's the thing. I am gonna pick the Cowboys because I'm a homer. It's just that simple. I love the Cowboys, and I think they can win this game. There is a chance that they can win this game. People who say they can't, they're just Cowboys haters. So I think if it will fall into the shoulders of Dak Prescott. It will. It's not even. It will happen. Like, he's going to have to make a couple big throws, and if he doesn't make them, that's probably going to be the game. So if Dak can stand in that pocket, if he can throw really, really good ball, and if he can make those plays in the red zone specifically, Dallas will win this game. Now, the Niners, they're a good team. Like, they're a really good team. Christian McCaffrey might be the front runner for MVP right now. That's how well he is playing. Because Patrick Mahomes, Tua have not had that good of weeks last week. And, I mean, Josh Allen, he didn't have a good week against the Jets. Like, it's just the only player has been really consistent has been McCaffrey. So you have to say he's the MVP candidate. And if you're going up against the MVP candidate, you got to stop him. You have to at least limit him, Like, if you can hold him to, let's say, like 50 or 60 rushing yards, maybe 30, 40 receiving, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, dude.
Like,
CMC under 100 yards altogether. Yeah,
give me a touchdown or two in there. That. But like, it's
and that's a bad day for McCaffrey.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, other running backs, that's a great day. So I think if you hold them to at least something that doesn't looks like it pops off the score sheet, I think that's a win. And then the other task is you have to help. You have to help with the other guys that they have, like you said, Ayuk, Kittle, Debo. Like, you have to win those one-on-one battles. If you
have to limit them at least.
I mean, at that point, it's just limiting the entire offense of the Niners. You have to stop something. If you want to win this game, you have to stop something. And I think if you can stop everyone else that's not McCaffrey, and you can limit McCaffrey, I think you can win this game. As long as the Niners don't put up like 40 points, I think you can win. As long as they put up like, let's say like 21, 24, I think you can win that game at like 28. But again, your offense has to score points. You got to get going. This is not going to be I don't think the defense is going to win this game for Dallas. I think if they want to win it, Dak has to go out there. He's got to play well. The offense has got to play well. They can't, shit the bed in the red zone like they have been doing. They got to go out there and they got to do what they got to do on offense.
Exactly. Yeah. And completely agree there. I think that the Cowboys have to be hitting on all cylinders, and the 49ers don't necessarily have to be hitting on all cylinders to win this game. But, when you have as many playmakers that we just said that the Niners have, they can just throw it or hand it off to one of those guys. And it actually, Debo could line up in the backfield if he really wanted to. You know what I mean? Like, he's done it before. So that team is just so good. And I think right now, the best team in the NFC, in my opinion. I do think they're better than Philly. I think Philly could have lost last week to Washington. They went into overtime, and Washington even got the ball first in overtime, but they didn't score. I thought that was going to be another undefeated that goes down just like the Dolphins did, but Philly held on. You know what I mean? I think that the 49ers are levels above everybody right now in the NFC, including Dallas. And I think that you need an early season matchup with the Cowboys to see how this does. Now, last thing I'll say on this game is this is a huge game this early in the season already, because the Philadelphia Eagles could take a 2-game lead on the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East if they remain undefeated. Now, Dallas plays Philly twice this season. I think it's going to split, right? So I think it's going to go 1-1. So that gets you back 1 game. Realistically, you're still a game behind Philly, even if you even in. And Philly right now,
you'd have to win out, yeah. After that,
exactly. Philly right now is not losing at the end of games.
No,
Jalen Hurts is not playing his best football right now. AJ Brown is. He is, and he's a man. You know what I mean? He's a man right now.
Mean.
Exactly. And Philly is not hitting on all cylinders, and they're at the end of games, they're getting really close to getting beat. The Patriots had them beat at the end of that game. They just didn't convert. You know what I mean? And Dallas just smoked the Patriots 38-3. The Eagles almost lost to them. Dallas also lost to Arizona. Giants beat Arizona, right? There's a ton of stuff that goes into football. You know what I mean? There's like a ton of stuff that happens, and who knows who's actually better than who until the end of the season. But this is a massive game. And if the Cowboys want to be in contention for the NFC East, they have to win this game. They don't have to win this game by a lot. All they got to do is just squeak by the 49ers and continue to win and not drop games like they did against Arizona and show up against teams like Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So that's the last thing we said about the Cowboys. Last game we're going to preview of this episode, Monday night, Raiders versus Packers. Packers came out last primetime game, got beat by the Lions. They want some revenge, but it's not going to happen. I think the Raiders are going to take them. I think the Raiders got them. They got too many playmakers. Dude. They got Josh Jacobs. He's kind of mad. You know what I mean? And Packers have been getting run all over this season. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have himself an absolute day. I'm not sure about Devontae Adams' injury status. I know he went down last game, but
he came back in though, right?
Okay. I didn't get it. Okay, good. I didn't get a chance to watch the Raiders game. I think he's good to go. I haven't seen any reports on ESPN. That'd probably be blast everywhere on social media right now if he wasn't playing. So I would assume he's good to go, but that's his former team. So Jimmy G or whoever they have back there at quarterback is going to be diming him up or just throwing it in his general vicinity, and he is going to go off. It's the Packers. He's not, you know what I mean? That's a guy that goes against his former team and it encircles that one on the calendar. You know what I mean? I think Devontae Adams is going to have himself a day. And Josh Jacobs, he was a rushing leader last season. You know what I mean? He hasn't necessarily had that breakout game yet that he had every game, it seemed like, last year. I think he's going to have it this week against the Packers because their rush defense to me has not been that great. And another big thing with the Packers, you got to watch out for one of the best pass rushers in football right now with Max Crosby coming off the edge. So that's one that's going to be a little bit tough to block too. And that's not what you want to see, a premier pass rusher against a young quarterback like Jordan Love, because typically the premier pass rushers usually win unless you're CJ Stroud. So, right now I got the Raiders. Who do you got, Raiders versus Packers?
Well, you see, if I took the Raiders, we would be the exact same picks once again, because that's just not fun. It's just not fun. So I'm going to go with the Packers. I think Jordan Love will probably have a bounce back game. He's looked too good this season to not, if just go down and have like another like pretty bad game. I agree with you. I think the Raiders defense is pretty good. I think Max Crosby is just a beast inside of a man. And he just rushes the passer, and Jordan Love's going to be like, oh my God, But I just don't know if I have enough faith in this Raiders offense quite yet. Depending on if Jimmy G plays, I don't know like his injury status. I don't know like a bunch about that. But even when he was in, it wasn't like the greatest thing on the earth. I think the Packers can surprisingly put up some points with Jordan Love, and the Raiders have kind of showed me that so far they really haven't been able to put up that many points, even with Jimmy G in. So I'm going to go with the Packers. I think Jordan Love's going to have a bounce back game, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be one of those ugly games that you're just going to see at the end who wins, you know. Give me the Packers. I just don't know with the Raiders. They have a lot of weapons, but I just don't know if they can utilize them in the way that, gets them the dub.
Yeah, I mean it's that one's going to be a really close game. It'll definitely be a toss up. Good primetime game though. Excited to see both those teams. Got any other sports notes? Or are we good to end this thing?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Sounds like we're good to end this thing. All right, folks. See you next week.
Bye.